The project on the workbench today is KD couplers for some vintage HO rolling stock. I'm doing some tank cars, and the problem is that there is no frame to put the KD couplers on. If we mount it a regular number 5 coupler box as close as we can to the end of the car, the problem is the coupler itself does not project beyond the walkway. I could use a longer shank coupler than the standard medium shank number 5, but I still don't like this method of attachment. I have some older refrigerator cars that I wanted to simulate the cushion underframe on, and I needed it to project outward from the end of the car by about a foot or a foot and a half. The cushion frame ranges between 18 to 24 inches of travel typically. So what I did for that was I took a piece of brass stock rectangular tubing that's 1/4 of an inch by 1/8 of an inch, and I've used that to simulate the cushion portion of the coupler frame. So the next thing I have to do is determine how long I have to cut my brass rectangular tubing to simulate the draft gear on this car. I want it to project about 18 inches beyond the walkway. So what I'll do is I'll measure the distance that is already on here. That measurement is 0.625 inches. I know that the 18 inches in HO scale is another 0.2 inches, so we'll take this out to 0.825 inches. So there's 0.825 inches. With the brass stock in hand, we'll go ahead and measure that. I'm going to use a standard coupler shank length, the medium, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay the head of the coupler to its position on the brass stock, and then mark the point for the screw, for the mounting screw. The next thing I need to do is determine how far from the bolster I need to make my mounting marks. So as I take another measurement here, I find the maximum I can go is 0.31 inches. So I'm going to make a mark at 0.3 inches. So I can see here that I don't have a lot of room between here and here. I'll probably only be able to get one mounting coupler in that space. I'll go ahead and so I'll mark that. I'm now going to take these measurements and I'll continue to mark them out on my brass stock for the other draft gears. We need to be careful when we drill these holes. What I want is to have a threaded hole on this side, and on the other side I want to have a larger hole that is a clearance diameter. Here on the frame itself, I want these to both be clearance diameters. The screws I'm going to use are going to be 256. So I'm going to go ahead and make those pilot holes now. So now I'm going to use a number 50 as the tap drill for the threaded hole on these 256 screws, and that'll be for holding in the KD coupler. Now changing from the number 50 tap bit to a number 43 clearance bit. This will be for the mounting hole and for one side of the coupler mounting holes. I'm going to go ahead and cut the body mount hole first. Now with the body mount holes drilled, I want to come back and drill only one side of the coupler mounting hole. The interior of the draft gear is going to have some flash and burrs inside of it, both from the dress up and cutting and from the tapping and drilling. So a flat file can be used to clean up the inside. With the flat head of the screw sitting acceptably flush with the bottom of the draft gear, I didn't know how long a screw I was going to need, so I've got quite a bit of excess there. I'm going to cut that off with a rotary tool. Okay, now it's time to put the couplers into the draft gear. Let's start first with a KD number 5. So right here we have the typical KD spring, and I will confess that I spent a lot of time reducing the profile of the wall thickness there, and to make sure that this was as smooth as I could get it without compromising the wall of the tubing. So the spring will go into the draft gear like that, and then I'll press, and right about there is where the spring now is wider than the interior diameter of the tubing, and you can push this in a little farther, and I'll do that now just by pressing down. It's almost in, just another little push or two. And there it's in. Now it has distorted the front of the spring, but we'll go ahead and we'll put the coupler in. A tight fit, but once it gets in there, it's free to move. I want my flathead screw to be on the bottom, so we'll put the flathead screw in. and we'll tighten it down. To get the head of the flathead screw to sit flush with the bottom of the draft gear, I had to enlarge the clearance hole from a 43 to a 33, which brought the opening to 10 thousandths smaller than the outer diameter of the flathead screw. And here is the KD whisker couplers. I'm using a 142 here. That's a medium length shank, but it's an over shaft. The shank intersects the top of the coupler instead of the middle. What you specifically need will depend on the application you're doing. But here's the insertion. We just put the coupler into the draft gear, drop in our retention screw, and there it is. So there's a KD number 5 and a KD whisker coupler, and here's what they look like on the top. So now let's go ahead and put these onto some rolling stock. So the first thing I'll do, I'll bring the draft gear up to the car frame and position it. And looking at the end, I like the overhang. So that's an acceptable coupler for me. So I'll go ahead and make a mark where that draft gear is going to be mounted. This is using the KD number 50 tap drill. This car has lead shot in the frame, and I was having difficulty, so I went to the drill press to do the number 50 KD tap drill. So here's the 256 tap. So my cushioned underframe draft gear for the tank car just needs a little touch-up paint, and it'll look like the one over on the refrigerator car on the left. Thanks for joining me for this build.